Welcome back to Restauranttopia, and we're talking about Roadrunner, the Anthony Bourdain story. We both watched the movie. It really was impactful for me. Can't wait to hear what Anthony has to say.
Imagine a perfect world where you can build a restaurant, open the doors, and make loads of money. Unfortunately, those days are over. It takes great leadership, hard work, and long hours to operate a successful restaurant. Together, we can make it happen. This is Restauranttopia.
Yeah, I feel like we're doing our little Siskel and Ebert thing here, and I really appreciate that. So it's first time doing a film review.
I don't watch much TV. I did watch a ton of Anthony's stuff, and I don't know, man. It changed my life. I don't know about you, and I don't want to sound cliche, and
it is cliche, but it's true.
No, I know
it's okay to be cliche.
But on travel and on worldview and food culture, it was something next level that at the point in my life when I was consuming a ton of it, probably a darker part of my life, and to see him live his life and is a little bit of an escape for me, but also he was so authentic and real.
I think to me, what you touched on there was the most important aspect for me is I'm a big sucker to where at that intersection of where culture and food kind of get woven together. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, maybe because I centered my whole life around cooking and a fascination with food. But that thing in particular, I just love the cultural aspect in conjunction with food. And then he brought it to us in a way that no other TV show or celebrity chef really did it. Most of the time, it's a celebrity chef and they smile and they ham it up for the camera and they talk about how amazing this food is. And we've seen show after show after show after show, you know.
His shows could have went down that path of, look at this gross thing I'm eating.
And they were at first, if you remember A Cook's Tour.
Yeah, no, I think so. But once he got his stride, he was so authentic, got people to that point of open up over their love of food and had a real intimate dialogue with somebody.
Well, and I think therein lies the magic, right? So now all of a sudden the food becomes a conduit for interpersonal relation, and it becomes so much bigger than the food at that point. But again, the table is the centerpiece of that. So I think that's how we can all relate to it very easy. But then what blossomed out of it was something really magical and quite the learning opportunity for me. And I would get off working a 12-hour shift and sit down. The first thing I'd turn on is Cook's Tour, No Reservations, A Layover, whatever show was on.
Correct.
And I could just unwind that way. Even though I spent all day with food, it really spoke to me on a ton of different levels, you know. But
I love that, unwind, because that's I use it as escapism. I was in a failed marriage. Life was not great. And to be able to kind of travel the world and experience amazing food, obviously not taste it, but to experience that culture and that travel, it was amazing. I loved the show.
It was the ultimate living vicariously. You know, it was what it came down for. Because I was never really rattled by a celebrity death. Maybe I'm one of those people that compartmentalize really well or really poorly, depending on what my shrink says, right? Yeah. I just cram it down in there. It's one of those things. But when he died, it was like I had to stop, and it messed my day up. And I've never experienced that from a celebrity death. You know, it's normally oh, that's sad and that's a bummer, and I give it some thought. But for him, it was days. And then I found out when I zoomed out and started seeing things on social media, it wasn't just me. It was millions upon millions of people. I don't know that I've seen too many celebrity deaths of that magnitude to have that much impact on that many people.
He connected with so many people. I mean, he connected with me, and I know he connected with you too. But I also felt, and maybe selfishly, that society had lost something because he had so much more great content that he was going to put out in the world. And it affected me, the epidemic of suicide. To see him take his own life, it made me look within and the sadness there. And well,
it's a great lesson, man, because when you look at it, I'm a chef. What do you think my perfect life looks like? Exactly what he was doing. Oh, yeah. So it's not even fathomable for me that he would want that to end in any capacity whatsoever. But I think there speaks to the power of depression, not to get too, mental health on you. But I mean, the guy was changing the world, one dish at a time, one location at a time, and through inclusivity and bringing people to the table and talking about the difficult subjects and enlightening so many people.
He didn't know that, though.
I think he did.
The one thing that I took away from the movie, it really did a good job of showing that he was constantly searching for something, constantly on the move, and that kind of I always got to be moving. And that I feel I'm wired that way too. You got to keep moving, you got to keep doing.
It's addiction.
It perhaps.
You're trying to fill a void, or you're trying to overcome anxiety, or overcome some sort of me feeling less than, like if I'm not achieving, then I'm not doing good enough as a human being. And I have that too. Like there's days where I don't get enough done at work and no one cares except for me. And I feel terrible all night because I was like, man, I should have did more. I didn't get anything accomplished today. But if I were to talk to someone outside of that, I'd be like, well, hey, you go back tomorrow. You get it done tomorrow. I'd beat myself up, I
agree. I feel, I'm not going to psychoanalyze him. The movie does a good job of doing that. I don't know if you can ever really, do that through a movie, but I don't think he had imposter syndrome. But I also feel like he understood how much his friends and the people around him loved him.
Yeah, I'm going to say that most people who resort to that tactic, and what I mean by that is suicide, I don't think they really realize their true value and how it's going to impact the people around them. They would never do it.
And I totally agree with you there. He grew up in a loved home and all of that type of stuff. But there was something in him that he didn't realize or couldn't conceptualize or believe that people loved him.
Yeah, he had a tough time with that. So as you know, Brian, and I'm going to switch gears here for a second.
Yeah.
I sat here and thought, I'm like, my God, was there ever a more compelling TV personality than this guy? Right? Like, I don't know if I've ever like gravitated or fell into someone's magnetic field as hardly as I fell into his. And I really tried to piece that together. What is it about this guy that so many people related to and so many people were heartbroken when he died? He's a stranger. Like I was lucky enough to meet him a couple times.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I lived a blessed life, and I found myself in some very cool situations with some very cool people. It's not like I knew the guy, it was a bigger deal for me than him, but I might have stepped on his toes one time at a party or something, and I met him, and that was a huge, huge deal for me. Incredible. I forget where I was going with that, but I think I just wanted to act like I'm cool for a second. Thing about
you are cool.
Thanks. I appreciate that, man. That's the first time I've ever said that. So, and I started thinking about him as a being, right? And I think about this guy who was an addict who owned it, right?
Yep.
So he had this vulnerability. I think of a hedonist, right? So he's out there just indulgence, 101. But at the same time, he's very humble and he's very sensitive and he's very confident, but yet he's conflicted. He's incredibly ballsy, but he's also incredibly seemingly introverted, believe it or not, in some aspects, which I never really thought until I saw the film. And it's like, my God, he is kind of introverted, right? In his own special way. There's a little bit of awkwardness to him and withdrawnness. So he's an intellect. He's a chef. He's a journalist. He's a world traveler. He was kind-hearted. He's an activist. He's an equal rights advocate, a romantic, a family man, a music fanatic, a workaholic. Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to say is there's something in there for all of us.
There is. And I think it speaks so much to people that are connected to the restaurant industry because it was so raw. Like, I don't imagine TV personalities living the restaurant life.
Now, you see, I think you said it right there, though. TV personality.
Yeah.
When the cameras come on, and I've been around some people making TV. They're way different when the camera's off them, right? And we all know that, and we all know about the divas. And then when the camera's on, the lights are on, everybody smile. Hey, everybody, what's going on? And they're all prim and proper. Like, I feel like he might have been the same person, camera on, camera off. I don't know that there was a difference to that. And that to me kind of felt to the word you used earlier as the authenticity of it. I think that was really part of the magic of this guy because there was no bullshit. There was no fake persona, no facade, at least that I know of.
I would say you're right. I would say, and kind of to talk about like that constant desire to keep moving and improving, and it is an addiction. I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. If you watch the movie, it was one addiction after another.
Yeah. I mean, almost everything he pursued at an addict's pace.
100%.
With that kind of fervor.
100%. Whether it was new relationships, whether it was jiu-jitsu, whether it was anything in his life, it was at an addict's level. And it was intense. In one of the emails in the movie, they said, stop aspiring to mediocrity.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I was like, yeah, so many people do that. And so many people want to bastardize their craft and cheapen it.
Yeah, it's easy to do.
It's easy to do because it's easy to do the cop, but man, he went full out. Whether it was the cinematography or whether it was anything in that was just so intense. I loved it.
Yeah, intense is a great way to put it, man, because there was a lot of intensity there from a lot of different angles. And if you think about some of the episodes of No Reservations or Parts Unknown, or they're in like war-torn Lebanon or Israel, and they're right in the middle of it, and didn't sugarcoat it, didn't edit a lot of it, didn't avoid it. They grabbed the bull by the horns and took on these issues and offered a very strong, formulated opinion on it. And that was very refreshing. It wasn't overly diplomatic in any way. It was kind of like, well, I know this is going to piss some people off, but that's okay because I'm edgy and I own that.
The one thing that he said, he goes, if everyone likes my stuff, I've failed.
Exactly.
That's what I think is one of the takeaways that I took from it. Well, one of many, but like, man, stop trying to please everyone. You're trying to make a great restaurant, but man, are you just trying to please everyone?
Yeah. Well, I just talked about this about 15 minutes ago in our weekly training sessions, and I talked about shrinking menus, right?
Yeah.
And what happens is that a lot of times when so-and-so comes in and says, man, I wish you had a burger on the menu, I wish you had this on the menu, and we like to appease people, and we add so many things to our menu, it gets so big, and all of a sudden what happens is we become generalists.
Yeah.
And we're just pandering to the crowd, so we kind of lose ourselves in that. But what I'm imploring people to do now, especially in the land of shrinking menus, which is I'm calling the biggest trend of 2021 because I can't get away from it.
I love it. And I think it was so necessary
and long overdue.
Yeah.
Long overdue. Listen, stick to what you're good at, stay in your lane, whatever it is. But when you get that focused, all of a sudden you do this stuff enough times, you can really pick out the nuances and improve them. And I think that's what he did. He so clearly identified his lane and stuck with it and truly mastered it. And he did it his way. And I appreciate that. And it's funny, we're equating that to restaurant menus, but it's really parallel whether you think so or not.
I agree. The movie was good.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's time we start talking about the movie, right?
To me, it brought up so many emotions and I want to say intense.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everyone would feel that way. If you never knew him, I don't know if it did a great job of, I wasn't a fan of Anthony Bourdain and this is a documentary and it's good storytelling. I think it is. But to me, it was just so moving because I knew the man through his work, but I didn't know it at quite this level.
Yeah.
And then to hear his friends talk about him, I was just in awe the whole time. I was like, this is intense. And the flood of feelings that came over me.
I saw something about it the other day, and someone wrote, it felt like the gathering after a funeral of a friend.
It did.
And that's how
that is a great way to put it.
Yeah. So like the body's buried, everything else, and now you're sitting at a house and grieving, and that's exactly, and it's David Chang and it's Eric Repair and it's all these people, because you notice he had a very close knit circle, and David Cho, the artist. And that's exactly how I felt. I mean, that really hit home to me. And it's funny because I'm foolish and naive enough to think like, yeah, I felt that too. Like, this guy was my friend. He doesn't know me from Adam, right? But again, that shows the power of his broadcasting ability and his connectivity, is that I really, really felt like I lost a friend and a mentor, and that's bizarre.
It is in such a superficial world where TV and media becomes less and less intimate and all fluff and all overproduced and everything.
Yeah.
And he was so authentic that he was able to connect. And the thing that I think differentiated him was he did everything different.
Yeah.
He wasn't taking Emeril Lagrasse's, Oprah's playbook and saying, all right, this is what I'm going to do and have this content. Like, it was unique. It was different. There's nothing like it.
Well, and that was the thing, is because what you just mentioned is some celebrity chefs, right? Like, Emeril was huge for the industry. And in fact, I think it was in Kitchen Confidential where Bourdain just completely dismantled Emeril Lagasse, right? And minimalized the importance he had. He later rectified that with him. He went to eat at his place and they hugged and kissed and everything was good. You look at these celebrity chef shows and it all revolves them around being around a celebrity chef. And you look at Bourdain and like, being a celebrity chef wasn't the strongest part of his repertoire. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. He was a good chef, and Leal was a good restaurant. It's a great brasserie in New York, or it closed. And it was a good brand, and but they had no Michelin stars. They weren't critically acclaimed. Like, it was an unassuming place, but the fact that he was a good enough chef gave him that platform. And then what happened? He was able to exercise his journalistic abilities, and that's where the magic was for him. So,
but I think, and I agree with you. I think it wasn't about him as a personality when he was on camera. It was about the other person. It was about the food. It was about the location. It was about the people. He had such an ability to do that. Now you learned about him, but he was not trying to make it about him.
No, he was like a tour guide and a narrator is what it came down to, right? So, we talk about authenticity and all that stuff. So they came out with that deep fake stuff. Did you like that or no?
It
Because
didn't
that was a hot topic on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Everybody was talking about it.
So for our listeners who don't know, and I didn't know before that, deepfake is where you take hundreds and hundreds of hours of someone's voice and then you run it through an algorithm and it's able to mimic or reproduce the person's voice.
Yeah, essentially you just type in the word and
Yeah.
it's used all that inflection and all that tone. It can reproduce any word you type in there.
It did not bother me and I didn't even notice it.
Yeah. So, and it didn't bother me at all. And I knew exactly when it was going to happen because I had read about it beforehand. But you wonder, we talk about the importance of authenticity. And it's like, man, was that a liberty the director shouldn't have taken, right? Because that felt a little icky to me.
It did. No.
You know?
I don't know if I would have noticed if I didn't know beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
But it did. I would say it did feel icky.
Yeah.
Icky is the best way to put it. Like
Thanks.
it's not.
Took me hours to think of that one.
Yeah. It's not.
Or I just talked to Nico and he told me.
Yeah. It's not great.
But I love the redemption at the end
Yeah.
with the defamation of the mural, which I thought was so spot on. And they're
That was
just
so
like,
cool. That
what
was
is
so-
this crap? This monument to him? Like, he wouldn't want this. Let's deface the shit out of this. And they just starts that. That is perfect. And I love that.
I did love that.
I thought that was such a great way to bring it back around and rectify all the wrongdoings from earlier on.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah. So it's, the one thing that was lacking from the movie though, man, if we get back to our Siskel and Ebert imitation, is there was one major character in the movie that I think was such a linchpin in all of it. They focused on a tremendous amount, but they didn't interview her, right? And that was Asia Argento, his new fling. And how did you feel about that? Did you notice that at all? They didn't interview her, but yet they really framed her as the bad guy.
I didn't like her afterwards.
I hated her afterwards, but then I thought, is that really her fault? Like I don't know her side of the story. I really would have loved to hear her side of the story.
I would have loved to have heard someone that was privy to their relationship.
Yeah.
Someone that was a fly on the wall, because they painted her as being the catalyst for his self-harm and that she wanted to isolate him, the things that kind of play into some mental health issues, painted her as the villain. I
Very much so. They painted her as the addiction, the last addiction of his life.
Correct.
And he did burn a lot of bridges, and he did go all in on this girl, right? And right, wrong, or indifferent. But with the Me Too movement and all this other stuff that he did, he alienated decades-long friends for the sake of this girl. Like a junkie stealing from their grandma is how I felt about that. I'm like, oh my God, this is an addiction to this girl. This isn't like a normal relationship.
No. And it pushes the person away, and not that you got to play hard to get, but like also you do have to have a balanced, normal relationship.
Yeah, so there was nothing about that relationship that was normal or balanced. In fact, I think it was open. And one of the words they used was discretion, right? That was the last thing that the director or one of his film guys had heard him say. He just said, I wish she'd use some discretion, right? Because she got caught by the tabloids or whatever with another guy. And apparently they had an open relationship, but he didn't want to deal with the press or the tabloids or anything else, that came after that. But truth be told, the guy was depressed long before that happened anyway. And from what I gather, he refused medical treatment on it and really didn't follow through with the doctors and things of that nature.
You hear the hurt in his friends and family's voice because he did reach out, and they knew that he needed help.
But you can lead a horse to water, right? That's the problem.
No, I know. There's people, and we're going to put this in the show notes because I think it's so very important, but there's a suicide prevention hotline and there's other resources out there. So if you know of someone that's hurting, try to direct them to these resources. If you don't feel that you can help, it's so very important. And it's
sobering.
It is sobering, and it's just so painful. Like what he was going through and what people go through that feel this. And we're around this as the restaurant industry all the time.
All the time.
You have to open up your eyes and see that people in your life are hurting, and can you be that light in their life?
Yeah.
And can you provide them resources to make sure that they're getting help? Can you, as simple as checking in, and I know we've done episodes on mental health, and that's not what this one's about, but I do want to talk about it because
it's hard to ignore when you talk about this movie.
Anthony Bourdain hung himself in a hotel room in France. He took his own life. And there's people in your life right now that may be hurting too. So I just encourage you, be a little kinder, be a little bit more aware. And I'm not speaking to you, Anthony, I'm speaking to our listeners. But it hurts my heart, hurts my soul.
Yeah, no, it's devastating, man. And it's it's one of those things. It's like, I guess if you would have asked me at the beginning of it too, like how his life would end, like I might have put a 50-50 bet on that, just because he was such a beautiful tragedy in and of himself. It was like the anti-architect of his own life, right? Mm-hmm. Like he was the reason for his success and also the reason for his undoing. And I don't know if it's fair to blame that girl. Like, as you said, catalyst, I think is a good word for it. But the catalyst ultimately isn't responsible for the reaction, right? The catalyst gets a reaction going, and then the reaction does what it does, him being the reaction and her being the catalyst. Mm-hmm. And I think Rose McGowan, her friend, came out and she said something pretty interesting. If you remember Rose McGowan, her finest work was probably Encino Man, because that movie's amazing.
All right, deep pull. All right.
I had to look it up because I didn't know what she was in. I'm not going to lie to you. I Googled it and I was like, oh my God, she's in Encino Man.
Isn't that the person from Titanic?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I had no idea.
All right.
Encino Man, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Pauly Shore's greatest work. Sean Astin, Brendan Fraser. Man, go on.
So the Times is not going to be calling us to be their new movie editors, correct?
Oh, probably.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends on the rating we give it. But anyway, what she said is she said, do not do the sexist thing and burn a woman on the pyre for misplaced, or a pyre of misplaced blame. Anthony's internal war was his war, but now she's been left on the battlefield to take the bullets.
Wow. That's deep.
I know. That's why I quoted it. And I was like, dang, Rose, you've come a long way since Encino Man. But I look at that because at first when I got done watching the movie, I'm like, screw that girl. Like, she's terrible. I hate her. She killed Bourdain and blah, blah, blah. And then I took a step back from it and I read this and I'm like, she's right. It's not anyone's fault. Like, you can only control you, and you can only control how you react to things. And you're responsible for that.
And this is where a little self-reflection, I mean, him talking like for 30 minutes about her parking a car and like that
was a little cringy.
It is a little cringy, and
but he was just so madly in love with this chick, right?
Or obsessed.
I think they're the same thing, aren't they?
I don't know.
Both require a restraining order, I think. I mean, you're the lawyer, tell me, right?
I don't know.
But yeah, you're right, absolutely. Like, she could do no wrong. Like, every step was perfect,
Yeah.
and that's a dangerous place to be in. You talk about the over vulnerability, and again, that's why he's alienating friends and breaking off partnerships and arrangements and burning bridges for this girl. I mean, he was all in. His chips were pushed into the middle. It was either going to be like win it all or lose it all, and I think we saw what happened.
Yeah, no. Great movie. It's streaming on Amazon right now. You can the links in the show notes, or just try Google. You can stream it, but it's worth watching. I loved it.
My God, Brian, as soon as I came home from the movie theater, I went to my house. I looked up A Cook's Tour. I started streaming it. I started from episode 1, season 1, and I've been streaming it ever since. Like, that's the only down thing about the movie, is that I forgot how big of a void was in my life in this realm. Mm-hmm. And they've done a nice job with Gordon Ramsay and Uncharted and trying to do that, where it's like travel and culture and food all mixed together, but it's not the same.
It's just
right.
It's not the same. I mean, it's just it isn't, and nothing against him, but it's just the show was so unique. It was once in a lifetime, and it was great.
I still have the final 2 seasons of Parts Unknown on my DVR that I haven't watched yet. Oh. And I'm just saving them. Enjoy. I don't know what I'm saving them for, but it's been 2-3 years now. Yeah. I still haven't watched them.
Enjoy.
I'm going to one day, and it's going to be that Sunday afternoon where it's raining or something, and I'll be like, all right, here it is, and it's going to be full attention. I'm going to savor every minute, because I until he died, I didn't realize how important he was to me and how important that show was to me.
Yeah, no, it's a great movie. Check it out, Anthony. Thanks for the time today. I know we got a little deep. We really appreciate all of our listeners, and thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks a lot.
This is a high-quality pod. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Adios.
Thank you for listening to Restauranttopia. The gratitude that we have for each and every one of you spending your precious time to listen to this podcast is immeasurable. Please make sure to tell a friend about this podcast. And also, if you have any feedback for us, visit us on Restauranttopia.com and drop us a line. You can also subscribe on your favorite place to listen to podcasts. Thank you, and have a great day. If you or someone you know suffers from symptoms of mental illness such as depression, anxiety, chronic stress, or suicidal thoughts, please contact with the Suicide Prevention Hotline, Crisis Hotline, or the National Helpline, or your local emergency number for help. These connections will be in the show notes, so check those out on Restauranttopia.com, and thank you for listening.